Welcome to Gone Phishing, a show diving into the cybersecurity threats that surround our highly connected lives. Every human is different. Every person has unique vulnerabilities that expose them to potentially successful social engineering. On this show, we'll discuss human vulnerability and how it relates to unique individuals. I'm Connor Swalm, CEO of Phin Security, and welcome to Gone Phishing. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. And today we have a special treat. We have a guest that has joined us on the Gone Phishing boat. Wes Spencer is not only a great friend of mine, but he is an expert in all things cyber insurance and cybersecurity. And I have brought him on to discuss what is really a wild world of cyber insurance. Wes, thanks for being here.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for getting me on the boat. Does it float, by the way?
Yeah, the boat floats if you put enough fingers and enough holes and water's coming through.
Perfect. The only kind of boat I float on.
Yeah, so I promise we have more fingers than there are holes in the boat right now. So we're good. We're good to go. But I've known you for quite some time, Wes. And cyber insurance feels like it is it's not a recent thing, but it feels like it's now recently become a hot button topic. So I figured we'd talk about cyber insurance. So what is cyber insurance? I know that might be a pedantic question, but let's start there.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone knows kind of what it is, but you're like, wait, I got to define this thing, right? But it's pretty simple. It's really just a specialty insurance product that's specifically designed for cybersecurity events, whether it's like ransomware, business email compromise, or any of those other kinds of like stacked kinds of things where you hit some kind of breach and it costs a lot of money. That's what a cyber insurance, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And so what are the essential pieces of a cyber insurance policy or cyber insurance coverages? What are some of the things you're seeing?
Yeah, so good question. First of all, there's good cyber insurance policies and there's bad ones. And you should definitely know. And here's an easy takeaway. If you are listening to this today and you're like, well, how do I know if I have a good one or a bad one? You probably have a bad one. Because if you have a good one, there's a lot of stuff that you have to go through to be eligible for it. And they're not super cheap these days. They're critically important, but not super cheap. So typically I tell people this all the time. You're not sure, you either don't have it or you got a bad one, right? And so a bad one is one where it's literally like, it's like a rider or what's called a warranty. We just stick onto like general liability. In other words, someone goes to a carrier and they're like, hey, or to an agent, hey, I need some kind of cyber insurance. Like, okay, cool. We'll just stick this little thing that covers maybe $50,000, maybe $100,000 onto your general liability. So you have some kind of cyber digital event, you're covered. The reality is those never pay out. They have what's called exclusions everywhere, which basically means they're not designed to pay out. It's not because someone did it because they're being malicious. They just didn't know that those things are junk. A good, like a standalone cyber insurance policy, Connor, is crazy important because it covers a whole bunch of things that you may not have thought of, which we can talk about, right? But at a high level, things like not just do I pay the ransom or do I not, but things like business, like loss, things like reputational damage, public relations, digital forensics, law, like legal help. Like there's a ton of stuff packed into it. And it's arduous to go through it, and it's not cheap to get anymore. So it's critically important, but the game is really changed as far as like eligibility for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. I know you and I have talked a lot too, specifically about some interesting carve-outs that you've seen on cyber insurance policies that are, they're becoming, one thing you've been telling me is cyber insurance policies are becoming not more complex, but better at actually understanding what the risk is to a business from the cybersecurity perspective. And we have a list, or rather, how do I want to phrase that? There's 5 things that at least you've told me and other people have not said are completely inaccurate that are the essential pieces of a cyber insurance policy or the things you need to do. What are those 5 things?
Okay, great question. So I kind of liken it to this whole, like, you must be this tall to ride. Like, you remember when you were a little kid, Connor, and I'm sure you weren't always the tallest kid in the room like you are now. No offense. And you went up to those rides and, you didn't even hit the green. You didn't hit the yellow. You were in the red. And like the basically the ride bouncer's like, get out of here, kid, come back next year. And, all your other buddies get on. And so here you are, singing like all by myself, and that's a real thing. In the cyber insurance world, it's also a real thing that the carriers have gotten to this point where like, look, because we carry the risk to this stuff, and we're the ones that are going to pay out when something bad happens. We're not in the business of taking a bad risk. Like, that's how they think, which makes total sense. And so what doesn't make a total sense is what they've done is they've consolidated around 5 controls that are all really important. But please don't listen to what the ones I'm going to give you right now and come back and be like, well, Wes, you must not be a real security guy because what about this one and this one and this one? Sure, there are a lot of other ones that are really important too. But from a carrier perspective, these are the 5 they want to see. So the first one is what you'd expect, multi-factor everywhere. So you got to have it in place. And here's the deal. If we run into those situations where like, well, the CEO will never go for it because he's like 74 years old and he doesn't know how to check email. He's not going to put MFA on. Too bad, so sad. We're in this day and age where everyone's got to have it and it's not as bad as you think it is anymore. It's not really that disruptive. So it's got to be everywhere or you're not getting coverage. The second thing is backups. And it's got to be what's called segregated backups, which means they're like they're like not on your network. And then what's called immutable. So they got to be in a way where no one can delete them, not even you. They're only deleted by the retention policy. So if a bad guy gets access to your network, what are they going to do? First thing to do is jump right into your backups and delete them. So offline, segregated, immutable backups. The third is EDR. So it's like endpoint detection response. I liken it to like a home alarm system for your network. It's really good at seeing what's happening on those computers, looking for signs of weirdness, and then alerting on it. So that's becoming a big deal. The fourth one, I'm going to save the best for last. How about that, Connor? The fourth one, though, is vulnerability management. So like, are you actually patching stuff? Like finally, the carrier's like, look, if you got some critical vulnerability and it's over 30 days old, why should I pay out for the breach with your laziness? That's how they think. And then the fifth one is one that you know just a little bit about, and it's security awareness training and phishing testing. They finally drawn this line in the sand, Connor, where they're like, look, training people goes a long way. We got to have it in place. So it's now a mandated control that they want to see every single small and mid-sized business going through is cybersecurity awareness training and testing users. It's that important.
So if I heard you correctly, those 5 things are required by, is it every policy you're seeing these days?
Just about every. So here's what'll happen. If you don't have those 5 controls, some carriers, like in all 5 of them, it's not like pick your favorite best 3 out of 5. Most carriers will just say, you're out. You're just too much of a risk. I got a lot of other potential clients. Why would I take you? But some of them will do it sublimiting. I'll give you an example. I talked to a client who didn't want EDR and like, we're not paying for this EDR thing. And so the carrier came back and said, fine, you want $1 million in coverage. We'll give it to you. But if you have a ransomware attack, we're only paying out $250K. That's it. We're not paying out anymore. And so what some of them will do, Connor, is they like sublimit away their risk, their damages.
Yeah.
But my point, and here's what I said back to the client, like, so time out. Do you not know that a ransomware attack is going to cost you at least $1 million? So you're really rolling the dice here. Do you really want to have a situation in which you now have $750K in exposure? By the way, this EDR thing is going to cost you like $2,000 a year. So like, how does this make sense? And they never thought of it that way. When I called them on it, they're like, oh, okay, well, I guess we should get it then. I'm like, yeah, you should get it. So
a question I've been thinking about is these 5 things or cyber insurance policies actually diving into what people are actually doing in their businesses. Is this in response to the loss ratios that you and I have talked about a bit over the past previous years? Or is it actually an attempt to create additional security? Now it's being pushed by cyber insurance companies.
So, okay, great question. So keep in mind, I hate on the carriers all the time. Like they're trying their best, bless their heart, right?
Yeah.
You know, but like they're really not good at this stuff. They come out of, I mean, the insurance world is centuries old. It's probably a half millennia old at this point. Isn't that crazy? And so like this whole cyber thing is like dark magic to them. Like they view it as like you have these dark seances and throw stuff into the witch pot and swirl a dead chicken over your head and wherever it lands is like, that's where cyber insurance is.
Yeah.
I joke, but like, so what they're doing is they're very reactionary. And what they're doing is they're like, okay, where we see a lot of breaches, we're going to come back very reactionary, very knee jerk and say, well, I guess if we had these things in place, then the breach may not have happened. And that's where those 5 came from. And it also means that's where we're going to see new requirements come out because they ask a lot of questions in the questionnaires. They're doing that to get enough data to where they can kind of figure that out, if that makes sense. And so just expect things to change a lot and don't expect consistency from the carriers when it comes to that.
Yeah, I remember talking with, it might have been Dustin or maybe it was Reed at Fifth Wall about that, and that the average, somebody mentioned the average cyber insurance policy went from 10 pages of questions to now it's like over 30 pages of questions. And it's not just, do you implement MFA? It's where, how often, do you rotate the passwords very often as well? Or how do people get access to their one-time passcodes? Is it SMS? Is it app-based? Do you do this through your SSO in some way, shape, or form? Now it's actually getting into the details. I guess now that cyber insurance carriers have data on, well, breach would have been prevented because these credentials wouldn't have been abused because the MFA would have stopped it in these scenarios. Is that kind of the thought process that you're seeing directly from the carriers?
Yeah, that's the way they want to go long-term is they're data nerds, right? They can tell you if you're this gender, you drive this car, this many miles, in this location, this time of day, you cost me this much. They can't do that with cyber yet, and they're desperately trying to get there. So they're still in the data collection. They still don't even know what all kind of data they need, but they're getting there. Fast forward 10 years, I think we'll see a lot more consistency around those things.
That is great. I think that'll be a lot like most insurance. It'll be great to have, and it'll feel like, and you'll hate it the entire time probably.
Yep.
I feel like it should be obvious. Why does all of this matter? Why does cyber insurance matter? Well, you brought up a case. It's like, are you really willing to, or are you capable of going out of pocket in the case of ransomware, in the case of your business being interrupted? Keep in mind, it's not, I had this conversation with MSP the other day. It's not, is something getting stolen? It's how long is your business shut down while this is being figured out? Was there a breach? Was their information stolen? Are they still in the systems? Could you actually not work for 2 months and still have a business on the other end of it? So preventing that or having some kind of lever to pull, parachute, so to speak, is really important.
Exactly right. Just at a super high level, if you haven't really understood like the cost and ramifications of a breach, you've got to. I mean, ransomware on average, 16 days of outage time, just like hard out, not including restoring systems. So take your monthly revenue, slash it in half. What does that do to you? I can tell you MSP after MSP have told me stories of when I go through these breaches and I've lost customers left and right. Sometimes I go through a year hemorrhaging clients, and that's not easy. And there's reputational damage that comes in. There's digital forensics. There's there's legal costs and lawsuits. Like these are things that the 1 million ticker gets hit really quick. A lot of people just don't recognize that.
Yeah, all of us are probably very familiar with how expensive lawyers can get on both sides of the equation. And I'll even give a shout out to our friend Robert Cioffi. You want to figure out how bad a breach can get? Go listen to the hundreds of times he's talked about it publicly, and the way he describes it, it'll make you change the way you act for sure. So thanks so much for being here, Wes. I always love chatting with you. So thank you again for being willing to come on here and chat with us about cyber insurance.
Anytime, my friend.
Absolutely. Hey, if y'all want to find out more about creating high quality security awareness training campaigns that actually engage the employees to help change their habit, then check out Phin Security. I know a little bit about the company at phinsec.io. That's PHINSEC.io, or click the link in our show notes. I'm Connor Swalm, the CEO at Phin, and thank you for phishing with me. See y'all next time.